have to say that I've been actually a Tesla owner for many years.
Oh,
Since
great. Thank you. You're
uh,
clearly you're clearly someone of great taste and of manner.
well, I will say that I drove from Miami to Fort Lauderdale to meet my brother for dinner, about 40 miles. And I did not touch, oh, well, I touched the wheel, but let me tell you that the Tesla drove flawlessly during that.
The car drove itself, is what you're saying, and you did not need to intervene.
It did not need me for this
Yeah,
entire ride. Uh,
yeah.
so I
It's
was,
pretty magical. It's like like when you tell people that they've not experienced it, they don't believe you. You know.
uh,
Um, yeah.
yes, and I didn't believe me either, to be
Yeah. Okay.
because I've been a skeptic about how far it would go,
Sure.
and your latest releases of software are really incredible. So I
Yeah. Thank you.
encourage people to try them. As a big question, and in that vein, coming in the next decade, what do you think is going to be the greatest advances in technology that will affect people's lives? What should they be expecting to see here from technology in their lives?
Okay. Well, I don't want to blow your minds, but AI is going to be big. I feel confident in that prediction. Well, but the funny thing is, if you go back even 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, if 10 years ago, even 15 years ago, I was saying AI is going to be like this massive thing that has deep super intelligence, um, smarter than the smartest human. Uh, People thought I was kidding. Um, and they thought that that's ridiculous. There's no way a computer is going to be smarter than a human and be able to do all these complicated things. And now, um, the the latest AIs are able to pass complicated tests better than most humans. Like they can pass the medical test better than like 80% of doctors or something. Um, they can AI can diagnose radiography better than most people who've been doing it their whole life. So that's just accelerating. Obviously, I think probably if you haven't seen Jensen's talk, it's excellent, um, and it really shows how much AI is advancing. And it's advancing on the hardware front, on the software front, in terms of data. There's like the new sort of thing is synthetic data, because we've actually run out of all the books, and you literally run out of you take the entire internet and all books ever written, um, and all interesting videos, like you don't need 1,000 cat videos that are exactly the same, but all the interesting videos, and you sort of distill that down into uh, tokens, essentially bits of information, and we've now exhausted all of basically the cumulative sum of human knowledge has been exhausted in AI training. That happened basically last year. And so the only way to then supplement that is with synthetic data, where the AI it'll sort of write an essay, or it'll come up with a thesis, and then it will grade itself, and sort of go through this process of self-learning with synthetic data, which is always challenging, because how do you know how do you know if it hallucinated the answer or it's a real answer? So it's challenging to find the ground truth, but but it is pretty wild that AI at this point has run out of all human knowledge to train on, which
And
is
but
crazy.
I know that you're building for Grok the largest AI center on the planet, and
We already have, yeah, it's an
and
operation.
Microsoft is planning $80 billion, where I used to work for a while. Uh, but
That's a
what
lot of money by anyone's standards, really.
but what is it going to mean? I did a poll, and we asked, "Is AI making a difference in your life today?" 13% said yes, and they said, "In 5 years from now, will AI make a difference in your life?" 87% expect in 5 years it will make a difference. What
Oh,
is it?
gigantic difference.
Okay, what is it going to do for people? Is it going to put them
Anything you
out of
want.
work or to work? Right?
AI will do anything you want, and even suggest things you never even thought of. So, I mean, AI really within the next few years will be able to do any cognitive task. It obviously begs the question: what are we all going to do? You know,
Mhm.
um, but pretty much any cognitive task that doesn't involve atoms, AI will be able to do within, I'd say, max 3 or 4 years maximum. Um, and then now, then the another element of it is the robotics. Is that you need so you can't just be thinking. AI can't just be thinking in a data center. It's got to do things. So that's where you need the robots. So um, and you need you know self-driving cars, which obviously you've experienced, and that rate of improvement is exponential in how good the self-driving cars are. Um, we feel confident in passing the basically being better than human driving um, in about 3 months, basically Q2 of this year. We feel confident of passing, uh, having a probability of accident that is better than the average experienced driver. And then it'll keep going from there. Ultimately, I think it's going to be 10 times safer than a human driver, and then 100 times safer. Like it's to the point where really it just won't crash. Um, so and that's happening this year with Tesla. So Tesla and this is a software update to our cars. So as you experienced yourself, um, it's the same car. It got a software update, and suddenly it's way smarter at driving.
Well, let me try a few timelines then, because look, I'm not the youngest guy around, so I
Yeah,
want
you
to
look
be
young.
here for
Yes,
as much
I mean
technology. Yeah,
my standards for what is young get older every year as I get older.
I used to build computers in kits, right? When you couldn't buy them yet, and I don't have to do that anymore. But
Yeah.
so self-driving, some timelines, self-driving cars, certified, government certified self-driving. You think will be within a year, two
Well,
years?
I mean, there already are autonomous, in some regions, like Waymo has autonomous vehicles with no one in it, but they're limited to like a few cities in the U.S. Um, the Tesla solution, which is a much more difficult path to go, but ultimately much more powerful, is a general solution to self-driving. So the Tesla software is just purely AI and vision. Doesn't rely on any expensive sensors, no lidars, no radars, um, or it doesn't even require knowing the area beforehand. Like you could have it drive someplace it's never been before, and no Tesla's ever been before. It could even be an alien planet. I mean, and the car will still work, still drive. So so that's this year. Um,
And when can I get a home robot? Okay.
right. Well, so that's the other element, is our humanoid robots. So I think probably most people, if not everyone, would like to have their own personal C3PO R2D2,
Mhm.
and I actually think humanoid robots will be the biggest product ever in history by far.
I agree.
Uh, yeah, it's just wild, because you can just say, well, every human is going to want one most likely, and some will want two, and then there'll be all of industry in terms of providing products and services. So that you have to say, what's the ratio of humanoid robots to humans? My guess is it's at least 3 to 1, 4 to 1, maybe 5 to 1. So we're talking about 20, 30 billion humanoid robots. Um, and the it's not even clear what money means at that point, or if there's any meaningful cap on the economy. I think at that point, assuming that things haven't gone awry, in the good AI scenario, I think we won't have universal basic income. We'll have universal high income.
So do you think 5 years for my first robot, or
uh, well, for Tesla, Optimus robot really it's unless somebody's got something secret we don't know about. Our Optimus robot is the most sophisticated humanoid robot in the world. Um, it's got a hand that has 22 degrees of freedom. It looks and feels like a human hand. Um, and we're aiming to have several thousand of those built this year. Initially, we'll test them out at Tesla factories. Um, but then, assuming things go well, we'll 10x that output next year. So we'll aim to do maybe 50 to 100,000 humanoid robots next year, and then 10x it again the following year. It's like 500,000 robots in 3 years. That's a
Right.
lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah. I
And
was
you
telling
know,
you guys, like, well, maybe we should think of this in terms of Roman legions. How many legions of robots will we have? Like a Roman legion is 5,000
so
troops or something like that.
when will we have a colony on Mars?
Well, I think we'll be able to send the first uh, uncrewed spacecraft to Mars in 2 years. So Earth and Mars synchronize every 2 years. And so we're at a synchronous point right now. So then the next one will be in roughly 2 years from now. And then there'll be 2 years from then, there'll be another one. So for the first trip, obviously, we want to make sure that we can land Starship without crashing. Um, like we need to prove that we can land Starship on Mars without incrementing the crater count. Um, and if those land safely, then maybe on the next trip we would send people, and then hopefully that would grow exponentially. So eventually there will be thousands of starships going to Mars, and I might have this like really cool visual like Battlestar Galactica or something, you know, the sort of
Mhm.
colony ships departing all together um, with these like bright points of light in space. I think it looked really cool. Um, but I think the goal has to be to get to the point where Mars is self-sustaining. So the point at which Mars is self-sustaining, which is really defined as the point at which if the resupply ships from Earth stop coming for any reason, that Mars doesn't die out, that Mars can continue to grow. So if there's something that happens on Earth, like let's say there's a World War III or some natural disaster or who knows what, but for whatever reason the resupply ships stop coming, if Mars can still continue to survive, then uh, the probable lifespan of civilization is dramatically greater. So, you know, if you sort of stand back and say, how would you evaluate any civilization? You'd say like, well, is that civilization still stuck on its home planet, or are they a multi-planet civilization? And we don't want to be one of those lame one-planet civilizations. Okay, we're gonna have a respectable outcome here. Even if we don't make it beyond our solar system, we're at least got to get to another planet. You know,
Well, and finally on my list, brain to technology communication,
yeah.
direct communication. Am I going to see that also? Because right now this is looking pretty good for me.
Yeah, so we've got Neuralink. We've got now three patients with three humans with Neuralinks implanted, and they're all working well. Um, and we've upgraded devices where the devices will have more electrodes, basically higher bandwidth, longer battery life, and everything. And um, so we expect to, you know, hopefully do I don't know 20 or 30 patients next year, or this year, I should say, um, with the upgraded Neuralink devices. And this our first product is we're trying to enable people who have lost their brain body connection, so they're tetraplegic or paraplegic uh, or it basically like you can imagine, like say Stephen Hawking. If Stephen Hawking could communicate as fast or even faster than a normal human, that would be transformational.
Yeah.
So that's our sort of our first product is uh, being able to read the motor cortex of the brain and say that if you think about moving your hand, it will move the cursor on the screen, and it enables people to control their computer or their phone just by thinking. And then our next product will be blind sight, so that even if somebody has lost both eyes or has lost the optic nerve, or even if they've been blind from birth, uh, we can interface directly with the visual cortex in the brain and enable them to see. And we already have that working in monkeys. Um, actually have a monkey who's now had that for I think 2 years, and so that enabling sort of basically enabling people to uh, control devices, and ultimately we think if you have a second Neuralink device that is past the point where the spinal damage occurred, we can actually transmit the signals from the brain past the where essentially the wires are broken and enable someone to walk again. So that would really be profound, obviously. Um, but I'm confident that that is physically possible. And then the long term goal for Neuralink is to be able to improve the bandwidth. So um, So right now, when we're speaking, our bandwidth in bits per second is quite low, and the sustained bandwidth of a human is less than 1 bit per second over a 24-hour period. So there's 86,400 seconds in a day, and the average human outputs much less than 86,400 bits in a day. Um, if someone's a writer, they'll exceed that, but most people do not output more than the number of seconds in a day. And but with a neural link, you could increase that output capability by 1,000 or maybe 1,000,000. Um, so it would be a profoundly different experience. Like you'd be superhuman essentially.
Well, put me down for all of this so far.
Okay.
An early adopter.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
um,
trust me, you'll really like the chip. I can guarantee it.
and let me kind of bring us down to earth for a question on Doge.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked very closely actually with President Clinton in the 90s, where we did have reinventing government. We did balance the budget in 2 years, actually.
That's awesome.
Go back.
Oh, those were the days.
Well,
It's been a while.
it didn't last very long
It didn't
because
last very long.
it got blown up very quickly. Have you identified some cuts that you're really looking at that you think will be successful? Do you think the 2 trillion is a realistic number now that you're looking more closely at it?
Yeah. Well, um, I think we'll try for 2 trillion. I think that's like the best case outcome. But I do think that you kind of have to have some overage. I think if we try for 2 trillion, we've got a good shot at getting one. Um, and if we can drop the budget deficit from 2 trillion to 1 trillion, and kind of free up the economy to have additional growth, such that the output of goods and services it keeps pace with the increase in the money supply, then there will be no inflation.
Right.
So that I think would be an epic outcome. Um, and in terms of saving money in the government, well, as you know, it's a very target-rich environment for saving money. Like if you look at any direction, it's like people's like, where will you find places to save money? I'm like, it's like being in a room full of targets. Like you could close your eyes and you can't miss. So there's just a lot of waste in government because especially the federal government, you just got a situation where the checks never bounce. Like they've got like the infinite money computer, and then the the people that spend the money are not the people. It's not their money. It's very very hard for people to care about spending someone else's money.
Yeah.
And then even if I know people in the government who do care about on just as a matter of principle spending money effectively, and they try to do so and they can't. The system prevents them from doing so, and they even get told to do crazy things. As again, it probably sounds familiar, where you get towards the end of the budget cycle, and they're told to spend up to their budget, and even on nonsense stuff, because if they don't spend their budget, the budget gets reduced. So it's actually sort of a perverse incentive to waste money, and then they kind of get punished for not wasting money. So it's just totally bananas. Um,
Well, I agree. You will find, I did a mathematical analysis in terms of how government used to do things. So if you take the Brooklyn Bridge or the Lincoln Tunnel and you
yeah, yeah,
adjust it for inflation, the infrastructure bill should actually get you 4,000 adjusted Lincoln tunnels, which
yeah.
of course, it's not because government is
Right.
not as efficient as it used to be.
No, exactly. Essentially, that we've had an accumulation of laws and regulations that make basically any large project essentially illegal. um, and, uh, and even if you try to do it, you've got to you've got to spend way more money on the paperwork than on the thing itself. Um, so and then it gets delayed, and so there's an element of like Doge which is very important, which is looking at regulations and getting rid of ones that where the the harm is worse than the good. Like you say, like, well, any given regulation, it's like, okay, there's some amount of good, some amount of harm, but what's that ratio? Is it like and there's a lot of regulations where frankly they're completely nonsensical. Um, and we want to get rid of nonsensical regulations that do not serve the public good.
Well, Linda Yaccarino in her keynote here mentioned the Doge thing, and she got enormous applause. So I think the country is really waiting to see this effort. They're behind it. They're optimistic. Let me try to get in one more topic here before I get one or two other questions out there, which is obviously Mark Zuckerberg made an amazing 180-degree turn. Uh,
Yeah,
you
that
know,
was cool.
so what's your reaction to what he did and his acknowledgement, frankly, that the government was in fact censoring things, or he was censoring things, or the government, or some combination thereof?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. I mean, 1,000% the government was censoring things. We know that for a fact from the Twitter files. Um, I mean, some of the stuff was like pretty illegal, frankly. I mean, the FBI had this portal into Twitter where they could spy on anything and censor anything, and had a 2-week auto delete. So we don't even know what they did, except that they had immense power to do whatever they wanted, which doesn't sound legal. And that sounds pretty crazy. And there was also a lot of self-censoring, and I don't know. There was just a lot of censoring going on, and I think I feel very strongly that you have to have freedom of speech to have a functioning democracy. If you don't have freedom of speech, freedom of expression, then how do you know what's really going on? And if you can't make an informed vote, then you don't have a real democracy. So it's just that's incredibly important to um, I think listen to the wisdom of the founders of the country and say why did they make that the First Amendment? You know, um, and they did it for a reason. Is because they came from places where uh, where there was massive censorship, and the penalties for speaking your mind would be fines, imprisonment, or death. And they're like, we really don't like that. We want that to not be the case in America. So then freedom of speech.
And
So yeah.
you just posted, you are the media. Are you citizen citizen journalism? I mean,
Yeah,
really becoming more and more important in this age of media, and you see it with the wildfires here.
yeah, exactly.
It really takes the citizens to report and tell people
Yeah,
what's happening.
yeah. Actually, you can think of it like um, before the internet, you kind of had to have um, the what I call legacy media, of which is you had to have some um, aggregation points where that you'd have reporters go and find things out. Then they would go to their office. They would write up articles. They would then print those articles on paper. That paper would then be distributed. And it was kind of the only way to know what was going on. But it was very slow, especially in the old days. I think when Lincoln was assassinated, I think it took like 3 weeks for that news to reach Asia or something like that. And in fact, in the old days, like you wouldn't even know that your country had gone to war because it would take like a month for the fact, hey, we're at war, to reach your village.
Yes. Well, we
And so
actually
yeah,
learned about Pearl Harbor because we decoded the Japanese. They
yeah,
didn't know that we decoded uh, their cyber system at
right,
the time, and that's how we actually learned about it.
yeah,
And we have just, if I can squeeze in, I just got 3 minutes here.
it's
A
fine.
couple
If
of
you got a little longer, if you want.
okay. Thank you. So just I got three questions in from the audience that Dan Gardner and Toby Daniels of On Discourse said, want to know, do you think the internet sucks? And what do you think we need to do to fix it?
You mean the content on the internet, or your internet connection? Because
I,
Starlink can help you on the internet connection. Starlink is great for internet connectivity. Um, so especially for like places that have bad connectivity. In fact, I think Starlink is really having a significant effect in terms of lifting people out of poverty. In fact, in many parts of the world where people have a product that they want to sell, but if they don't have an internet connection, they can't do it. And if they want to learn things, like basically you can learn anything on the internet for free. Like MIT has all its lectures that are available for free on the internet, but you need an internet connection. And so once you have an internet connection, you've got access to education, you've got access to a global market. So I think it's very significant how connectivity makes difference in people's lives. With respect to maybe the question was geared at like, is there too much negativity on the internet? Um, the I think at times there is too much negativity, and actually on the X platform, I proposed like, well, we were going to tweak the algorithm to be a bit more positive, and then people got upset about me for that. I'm like, okay, like, what do you guys want?
Well, actually,
Um,
the second question from Zach Moffat, CEO of Target Victory, was how do you make pessimism uncool again? So I think it
sure.
ties to maybe exactly what you're saying, which is that it's become people are afraid. This used to be a can-do nation,
Yeah.
so always very positive, and
Yeah.
now the country. When I ask if we're on the right track or the wrong track, they never say that we're on the right track anymore.
Okay.
There is an
Well,
in.
hopefully, hopefully with this, you know, I'm actually pretty optimistic about the next 4 or 5 years. I think we're actually gonna. I think we have the potential for a golden age. Um, so we need to. It's very important to get rid of the mountain of regulations that are holding things back. And I don't mean there's some good regulations, but there's just so much that we just can't get anything done. I mean, you take sort of the California wildfires, for example. Um, we really need to have fire breaks, and we need to clear the brush back away from houses, um, and uh, and we need to make sure the reservoirs are full. These are all kind of obvious things, but due to a bunch of environmental rulings, you can't actually do that in California. So they're not allowed to do the fire breaks, and they're not allowed to push the brush back away from houses, because it might hurt some, like, red-legged frog or something like that. It's like some sort of creature that, usually a creature you've never heard of, that is preventing this from occurring. Um, there's like this fish called the smelt, for example, uh, and so we have far more freshwater runoff into the ocean than we should really, and on the theory that it helps this one little fish that likes a slightly briny freshwater saltwater mix. And if we keep more freshwater, then the smelt fish will not be happy. But there's no actual evidence that the smelt fish is going to be unhappy if we keep a bit more fresh water. In fact, um, so we should keep more fresh water, keep the reservoirs full, and just have some sensible fire breaks and move the brush away from houses. That's just an example of, like, we've saved a lot of trouble, a lot of tragedy in LA if we'd done that. Um, so and yeah, and I think AI and robotics is going to lead to a higher standard of living for people beyond what they can imagine. So um,
Well,
I think we're
and
going to have AI doctors in medicine that are pretty incredible. So
that's the final question. She says from Catherine Heritage, if I got that right. If all the robots and everything frees up time for humans, what is it they will do with that time, or what can we ask them to do with that time? And I think that's
yeah,
a question that rounds out the circle of technology.
yeah, I guess it would be a bit like being retired. Um, um, I mean, now this will take a few years, but at some point, if as AI gets as AI and robotics get better, eventually AI will be able to do everything that humans can do. So any task you do will be optional. Like, it'll be like a hobby, or you know. So now it does beg the question. Well, like, will our lives have meaning if the computers and the robots can do everything better than we can? And That is that is a real question. I do wonder about that myself, and that's why we need the neural link, so we can enhance human capabilities, so we can keep up with the machine. Um, yeah,
Well, I just want to thank you for, well, this obviously incredibly optimistic view about technology and where it's going. I feel reassured that the kind of leaps that are going to be made, particularly what you're working on, are just incredible in the next few years, not decades away, but
right. Really, very
you
close.
really talked in terms of years
Yeah,
consistently, and I'm very thankful for that. And I think that that's absolutely tremendous message here at the where we are. in Las Vegas, kind of studying what technology is going to be available to people. And really, again, thank you for the tremendous role in opening up free speech, and for the role that X and Linda is playing in terms of that. I know that we're working to get full recognition by everyone of the platform as it should be, because free speech is I think the proper way to go.
Yeah, I think on balance it's good. And one of the things I try to create conceptually with the X platform is like it's like a global consciousness. It's like collective consciousness of humanity. Now, if you have a collective consciousness of humanity, well, you're going to get every aspect of humanity, good and bad. That's just naturally what happens. Um, so, but hope, I do want it to be a good and productive thing, and have this. The aspiration is to maximize unregretted user minutes. So, like, you spend time on the platform. It's like, well, did you regret it or not regret it? And we want to maximize unregretted user time.
Well, and I always go back. I always say that everything in technology was either in the Jetsons.
Yeah, London Jetsons.
It's either in Star Trek or the Jetsons, more or
Yeah,
less, right? And but the one thing that was never predicted in any book that I could find is social media. So it's the one thing that they
yeah,
never really. There's no book built around how social media would develop, how it would really impact society,
yeah,
how it would move political movements, and so forth. And it's interesting that everybody missed that in their projections. And so I guess the last closing question maybe is what do you want X to be, and where is that platform going to go? And I think that's a
yeah.
great.
Well, I mean, I do want X to be a force for good. um, that exactly, because um, um, so I do want X to be a force for good, and I do view it as sort of like the group mind of humanity, and we want to have a sort of a healthy, happy, and sane group mind versus the opposite. Um, and I mean, or yeah. So and I want it to be just like the best source of truth. Like, if you're trying to understand what's going on in the world, that it has the most accurate, um, the most up to date information about anything large or small. Um, so um, so it gives you the best understanding of what's going on in the world. Anywhere, anytime. Um, yeah.
Terrific. Thank you. Any closing thought you want to leave us with? Otherwise, I want to thank you for being so generous with your time.
You're welcome. I think I would encourage people to be optimistic about the future. I think it is much more likely to be good than bad. So that's my prediction.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.